Hey, so in this video, I'm going to be talking to you about muzzle conditioning your dog. Now, there's a lot of reasons to muzzle condition your dog. If you're dealing with any sort of aggression or reactivity issue, a muzzle on your dog's face is a really great safety measure temporarily anytime they're in a situation where they might bite somebody. Okay, and that's kind of a broad statement because there are lots of different types of aggression and reactivity. But if you at all have the slightest feeling like your dog could bite someone in this situation, they should be muzzled until you can trust them not to. So if you're dealing with aggression and reactivity, it's really crucial to have for safety, for the safety of you, for the safety of your dog and other animals and other people. But beyond that, I feel that every dog should be at least comfortable in a muzzle and should be able to wear one without getting stressed out. Because on the worst day of your dog's life, your dog could be at the vet in a lot of pain, and even the nicest dog on the planet might snap at your vet if they have to manipulate a broken leg or something. So they're going to put a muzzle on your dog in that moment anyway to protect themselves. And if your dog's not familiar with it, it's going to scare the hell out of them. So I really like my dogs to be comfortable in muzzles so that if anybody ever puts one on unexpectedly, it doesn't add to the stress of the situation. Beyond that, I find them helpful anytime my vets need my dog in a cone to keep them from licking or scratching at a certain part of their body. The cone is great because it very clearly blocks their face from getting to any other body parts, but it funnels noise into their very sensitive ears, and that's kind of stressful for them, as well as getting stuck on everything in the house. The muzzle is much less obtrusive. As long as they're conditioned to it, it really doesn't bother them that much. So I'm going to be showing you on my dog Murphy how I condition a muzzle to a dog, because we want the dog not to be stressed out by it, to readily put their face into it or allow it to be put on their face. And we want them not to fight it once it's on there anymore. It shouldn't be stressing them out. They shouldn't be thinking too much about it. Now, this is what you would do given enough time if you're dealing with your own dog or a client's dog over a period of days or weeks. Obviously, there are circumstances where you're in an emergency and you might have to just snap a muzzle onto a dog's face. If you're a vet or you're a trainer dealing with a dog that's attacking people, you might have to do it under less than ideal circumstances. But generally what you want to try to do is make the muzzle as approachable as possible so that the dog is accepting or even eager, if at all possible, to put that muzzle on. So before you even worry about training your dog to wear the muzzle, you want to find a muzzle that you're going to use for training. And that's a little tricky if you've never done it before, but go to your local pet store or go to Amazon and you'll find generic brand muzzles that look a lot like this. What you want is a basket muzzle. I'm not going to recommend the brand, but you'll see probably this very one on the shelf, and you'll see a lot that are similar to it. It's maybe different materials, maybe different colors, but you want a basket muzzle, okay? A basket muzzle as opposed to a cloth muzzle. So what a lot of groomers and vets will use is a piece of cloth that sort of wraps around your dog's face and clamps their jaw shut. That's very good for administering a vaccine, but if your dog has to wear it for any length of time, they can't really open their face and pant in most of those, so they're not super safe long term. So get a basket, and you might have to play around with sizes a little bit. Some stores will let you try them on in the aisle, but what you want to do is find one that's big enough that your dog's jaw isn't clamped shut or squeezed in any direction, but also not so big that it's rattling around on their face and they can just shake it off. If your dog's not used to it yet, which they aren't if you're watching this video, what I typically recommend, rather than trying them on in the aisle and scaring the hell out of them, is just buy 2 or 3 sizes that are pretty close or that you think are pretty close and try them at home as part of the training process. At most, you should be spending 20 or 30 bucks, right? Depending on your dog's size. They could be anywhere from $10 to $30. Maybe more premium materials might be closer to 40. But again, you're not buying a custom muzzle, just get a generic one that's relatively inexpensive and looks pretty close to the right size. You can always change it later. The one exception to getting a basket muzzle is if you have a flat-faced breed like a pug or Frenchie or something. They can't wear this basket because there's no snout to hang the muzzle on. So you'll need to get them a muzzle that's made for them. You'll see it in the same aisle right next to it, but it looks like a mask and it's just a mesh material, kind of like a window screen. They look kind of ridiculous. They're a little more scary for the dog, a lot of dogs anyway, but you'll train exactly the same way. There's a little hole on the mouth so that you can feed them through, they can drink water through it, and they can open their jaw to pant. So if you have a flat-faced breed, you'll have to get one of those. Otherwise, go for a basket muzzle. All right, so the first thing you want to do when you are muzzle conditioning your dog is teach them to stick their face in here voluntarily. Don't even worry about trying to actually put it on. Don't worry about actually using it yet. You're just trying to get them comfortable sticking their face in this big scary basket. And I find the easiest way to do that is to make it a food dispenser. Now, I generally just use training treats with most dogs, but what you might do if your dog is particularly scared or if this is brand new to them, is you might feed them their entire meal piece by piece through the muzzle. And so all you do is you cup a little piece of food in your hand and you stick the muzzle on top of it. And the only way to get that treat is through that basket. Muzzle. Good. And I like to add a command like the word muzzle. You don't have to use that word. You could say Bane or Darth Vader, but you add a command like any other, like sit or like down, and then you praise them or mark what they're doing with clicker, yes, good, whatever you do to mark the moment that they get it correct, and then they get that piece of food as a reward. And you're going to do that repeatedly until they are putting their face in there so eagerly that it feels like you don't even need the food anymore. Muzzle. Good. Now, depending on your dog, that might be a few days, might be a few weeks. If you want to take your time with this, don't rush it if you don't have to. Muzzle. But get them sticking their face in there voluntarily. After you get them to that point where they're eagerly diving their face into your muzzle, what you want to do is you want to get them comfortable with the strap going over the back of their head. Still not even putting it on, just playing with the strap and the pressure across the back of their head and behind their ears. So what I like to do for that is use a little more food, small pile of food. Same thing, cup it in the bottom of the muzzle so they have to get it there. And while they're sort of chewing away at that muzzle, I'll play with that strap and I'll sort of pull it down behind his ears and I'll let him get comfortable with what that feels like. I don't want him to be scared by it. Not going to bother buckling it. Muzzle. Just sort of getting a feel for how that would go, right? And at the same time, I'm sort of looking at where it fits on the back of his head and about how tight I'm going to have to strap it. Now, this is just a simple belt buckle style one, so I would sort of like count the holes and determine about how tight it needs to be. In your case, depending on the brand of muzzle that you're using, there might be more of a sliding strap that you would need to take off and adjust and then try it again. Whatever the case is, you'll get a pretty good feel for how tight it needs to be. Again, after a few days or a few weeks, when he's really comfortable with this, I'm going to then start to actually try to strap it on. And so what I'll do is I'll, again, use a small pile of food and muzzle. Let him stick his face in there. I'll get the strap pretty much settled. I'll gather up the two ends with one hand. And as soon as he's done with that food and I've got a free hand, I'll then use my other hand to get that strap done because I'm not quite that good with one hand. You might be. But you want to do this fairly quickly. You don't want to be too fussy and stress your dog out, but you want to get it over with and let them get comfortable. And then if your dog is new to this, they're going to be weirded out by that thing that's still on their face. So you want to very quickly continue to feed them through the front of that muzzle to keep them preoccupied and not stressed out by that muzzle. Now, Murphy is already very used to this, so like I could leave him alone and he'll probably just lay down. Yeah, as if on cue. But what you want to do is keep feeding them for a few minutes so that the muzzle is still on, but it's still a treat dispenser. And then after a few minutes of that, what I would do is put a leash on him and take your dog outside for a walk. Any dog, given enough time to play with it, will find a way to paw the muzzle off by pushing it up or pushing it down. So what you want to do is keep their front paws busy on a walk, and beyond keeping their paws busy, the walk has the benefit of forcing them to pant. And when they pant, they have to open their mouth, obviously, and they realize that it doesn't restrict that. Furthermore, they can eat food through it. And then when you get back, usually your dog's thirsty after a walk. Hopefully you're at least walking enough to make them a little thirsty. And when they go to drink water, they're gonna make a mess because it's gonna be clumsy, but they should be able to dunk their face in and drink right through the basket. Now, they might not be comfortable with that at first, but once they realize that it doesn't hinder drinking, eating, or panting, the muzzle becomes much less threatening. And then you get dogs like Murphy that'll just chill
with that muzzle on.
All right, a couple other things I didn't mention. So first of all, that's the process for getting your dog used to putting the muzzle on. You then need to worry about taking the muzzle off. Not because taking it off is difficult to do, but because you don't want to accidentally teach your dog to demand that it be removed. And what I mean by that is your dog's going to be kind of impatient about this thing anytime you give them a moment to stop and think about it, especially when it's new, right? So as soon as you stop walking, they're going to be aware that this thing is still on their face, and they're going to want to shake it off, and they'll start pawing at it, and they're going to try to take it off. And given enough time, they will be able to. You don't want to take it off while they're demanding it come off. You want to keep them busy so they're not demanding, and then you take it off before they get fussy about it, so that you're the one ending the exercise, not them. Now, a lot of muzzles have features designed to help prevent dogs taking them off. I don't bother using them because I find, for a couple of reasons, right? First of all, I find that if you've taken the time to acclimate them to this properly, they won't be messing with it that much, so you don't need them. And second of all, they end up causing more problems than they solve, right? So this particular model, every model is a little different, but this one has a loop here on the bottom, which would attach to a collar around the dog's neck, a secure collar. Now, the idea with that is your dog then couldn't push it up off their face because it's stuck to a collar here. I don't love that because depending on how you train and what tools you're using, there may be a whole bunch of collars here, and none of them are really ideal for that loop, right? And it's a bigger pain to put them on. You might have a slip lead, a prong collar, an e-collar, or a Seresto collar. You could have any number of things there, and there's only so much real estate on the neck. And again, your dog really shouldn't be messing with it that much anyway. If they are, go back a step and make the muzzle more approachable. Furthermore, this muzzle, and a lot of muzzles come with a nose strap. So I removed it, but it would attach here and go up your dog's snout behind their head and attach to that main strap behind their ears. The idea with that is they can't push it down off their face because it's strapped over the top of their head. Again, same thing. If your dog's comfortable with it, it shouldn't be that big of a deal. And if you have that extra strap, it's an extra thing that you need to loop over their ear and get them used to, acclimating them to so that they're comfortable with that pressure up here. And it takes extra time to put it on, and you really don't need it. Just get your dog comfortable with the muzzle to begin with, and they'll just wear it comfortably. Now, I find a lot of people are resistant to the idea of their dog wearing a muzzle, and I think sometimes it's like social pressure. They're worried about the stigma that they'll receive or their dog will receive of how mean they look from seeing them in a muzzle. And I think partially there's a political element too, because like right now I'm filming this at the end of 2021. People are a little impatient about still having to wear masks in certain places. But much like those masks, the muzzle is meant to protect your dog in dangerous situations until we have better solution, right? We want to train your dog so that they're comfortable in stressful situations and they won't have to wear it forever. Like the mask, you take it off at home, hopefully. You're not wearing it by yourself in your private residence. Your dog doesn't need to be wearing it all day, only in those situations where there is a greater risk of a bite. So if your dog's issue is, for example, strangers in your home, then you'll put it on anytime you're expecting company. And when they're at home alone with you, they don't need to wear it unless you're practicing, if you're conditioning the muzzle. But your dog isn't wearing it all the time, and certainly we're working them towards a future where they don't need to wear it in situations that were previously stressful.